Okay, welcome back or welcome to Ted and Yogi's Pac-12 Adventure with our producer, Michael Molinari. I'm Yogi Roth with Ted Robinson. It is late Tuesday night. The CFP week number 2 has been out. Hopefully, I know everybody on this call has voted. We are presented by Bet Online. And fellas, we've got only 3 games left. 3 left.
Do we get a vote in the CFP?
You should. Somebody got Clemson in the CFP still. That one blew my mind.
Somebody had Clemson in the top 4?
The top 10. Still sitting at 10 without a quarterback. Ahead of UCLA? Come on.
I know. I hear
a lot of UCLA complaining on the social right now. That's what I'm picking up. And they're usually not the complainers. I won't say who usually is, but they're usually not. But Pac-12 pod after dark, what could be better?
Voting. We got it there. We voted. Absolutely. That was great because we're talking on Tuesday night, as Yog said, Monday night, every Pac-12 team played basketball to open up the season. And that was done intentionally. Nobody played today. And that was a great move by the conference schools to make sure that everybody had every ability to vote.
Amen. All right, Michael, how was it for you juggling basketball? You were with Walton and Ted on Monday night. Now here we are back in football mode.
I mean, I get to go from the 2 most positive people on the planet between you and Bill Walton. So this is like, I'm in my wheelhouse right now. This is fantastic. Ted too. Ted and I both get to go from you and Bill. Scott Barkey, our director, also on the show last night. It was my wife and I had date night. She came to do graphics. So it was quite a night. Yeah, I had date night and we both got paid. That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. Steal. That is pretty good. All right. So as you guys know, basketball is back, and Bet Online remains your number 1 source for all your sports betting needs this season. You will find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, game trends at Bet Online. It's your source for all sports wagering information, live betting, free contest, giveaways all season long, regardless of the season. They have everything: favorite sports, favorite events, NFL, NBA, college football, boxing, golf, and of course, basketball. So go to betonline.ag to join. Receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Please use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. Bet Online, where the game starts. Now, Michael, we're going to start with you because we have a guest today that you brought to us that came from the game in one of the most unique settings that I think Ted and I have seen while broadcasting a game together.
Yeah, we had, I thought we've mic'd players, we've mic'd coaches, and arguably the best student section in our conference, the mighty Utah student section, otherwise known as the Muss. I said, why don't we try to put a mic on someone from the Muss? So I get this great recommendation of Andrew Drossel, who joined us. And I will bring him in before I got to ask him. I mean, he looked like a future analyst, that's for sure.
All right. Well, let's bring him in. Without further ado, let's bring in Andrew Drossel.
Hey, watch this. I'm gonna make a play call here. You got Jalen Dixon, end around with Jalen Dixon, touchdown. End around with Jalen Dixon. Bold prediction.
There he is. What's up, man?
How's it going?
Welcome to the show, man. I'm assuming you're a subscriber already. You get the alerts whenever our podcast pops up.
Of course. You got to be subscribed.
There you go.
Well, usually I host this, but I got to introduce you. I'm going to let Michael take over from here, man, because he's the producer. This was his brainchild.
Yeah, well, I was just saying we've mic'd coaches, we mic'd players, so why not try with the best student section in all the conference? So I'm not even sure. The sports information department set me up with somebody else who suggested Andrew, and we kind of texted back and forth. We had one phone call, and then I think I went over and met him with the great Dave Walcott, our audio expert. Put the mic on about 4:15, and away we went at 5:30. And right off the bat, somebody predicts a touchdown. So I want to know, Andrew, Tell me, do you normally sit in the stands and predict what's going to happen in the game, or was that the mic was on, so I'm going to give it a whirl?
I think it's a combination of both, to be honest. I look at football in terms of schemes and tendencies, and so I like to make those sort of predictions and based on the situation and circumstance at the time. I think a part of it was luck too, but knowing Utah football and being so passionate about it, I think that really helped me.
All right. So did you call Rising's winning runs, both of them against USC? Did you call those?
I knew they were going for 2. How they did it, didn't really matter, but I knew they were going for 2. And in that circumstance, you have to.
I was impressed in the deluge that now some people cleared out at halftime, but not the Muss. Is it like illegal for the Muss to leave early? Is that like a rule?
It's not necessarily a rule, but when you're so passionate about the team, it's hard to leave at halftime, despite the elements that we faced that night.
Yeah. I think you said you felt like you were living in a puddle or something like that. I think we got that on. That was pretty good. I want to ask you, who came up with the sign? One of my favorite signs is Witt's Calves. And I think you're right next to that. Who came up with Witt's Calves?
I think all the credit goes out to my fellow Muss board members on that one. It's kind of a running, not necessarily a joke for lack of better terms, but Witt needs to show all of us what his calf day routine is for sure.
Well, every time we meet with him at we go in at 10 in the morning on Fridays, and that's our meeting time with Utah. And the first 2 coordinators are, dressed up, nice, ready to talk with us. And then Witt comes in last, and he comes in with a full sweat. He's just gotten off the Stairmaster or the calf machine, or I don't know, but he's working out just before he walks in. Does that surprise you?
Not in the slightest. I've heard rumors that Witt hasn't missed a workout in couple years. So
I could believe that. I definitely believe that. I want to ask you one. You guys have Stanford coming in this week. So you were an excellent prognosticator last week. Give us a little breakdown on the game this week.
I think anytime you play in the Pac-12, there's going to be a challenge. But I have full confidence with our personnel. We're very deep at a lot of positions, I feel like, especially in the run game. You saw Nate Johnson become a factor this week. We'll see if they incorporate him in the final game of Rice Eccles, my final game as a student here at Rice Eccles. So the Muss will be popping as well. And I know, and it's shown throughout the games this season that the Muss is a huge factor. And anytime we could play at home, the odds are in our favor for sure.
All right. So have you been showing like clips of yourself at all, like around campus? And we know your phone blew up. We heard everything you said.
Yeah. I've had people reach out and text me that I haven't heard from in a little bit. They saw me on TV. It's pretty exciting. I think I said in the microphone that I don't think I've ever been this popular in my entire life. So
we're excited people saw you, number one. But go ahead, Ted.
Andrew, he's obviously, you're saying this week will be your last game in the Muss at Rice Eccles. What about the Rose Bowl?
That's a very real possibility, and right. I think the team and the University of Utah community has that expectation that we could be there again. And the Utes travel really well. I think you saw it last year at the Rose Bowl. So if we're lucky enough to make it there, which I have full confidence that if we take care of business, we will be back in Pasadena this year. But I'll definitely be there if that's the case.
Were you there last year?
Oh yeah.
Tell us what it was like.
It was nothing like I've ever seen before in a college atmosphere. The game, of course, is one of arguably the greatest college football games of all time. Back and forth scoring against a premier Big Ten school. But the atmosphere was electric. Everybody was excited. And it was an all around just amazing time that I'll never forget for sure.
I forgot to ask you in all this. What do you, if it's not sports casting, what do you want to do when you get out of Utah?
Yeah, so I'm currently pursuing math and statistics right now. I'm almost done there. My goal is to ultimately be in a R&D or some sort of analytics role for a sports organization, possibly baseball, basketball, football. I'm also currently interning with the Applied Health and Performance Science team for Utah Athletics. So we do some analytics based projects on that front as well.
Great. You're in the right place. You could get in, you could work on that book that Kyle, who holds is next to Kyle, Yogi.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The book.
Yeah. The analytics book. Yeah.
Or we could set you up with the stats train for the Pac-12, or Greg Miraz, the stats guy, as an internship. Maybe we'll see. He's a classic character for sure.
I love it. Andrew, thank you for coming on. And as Ted often references, thank you for your life. And we enjoyed the time. Make sure you stay connected with us, because we see if we can hook you up with some people in sports that do R&D and sports analytics. Make sure we take care of you, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Go Twins.
Go Twins. Go Twins. Absolutely.
I love it. Andrew, thanks, man. Andrew
Thank you, guys.
Drossel. That was awesome.
It is. For those that are, if you're listening and not watching, Andrew's got a Twins banner right behind him there. His family's from Minnesota. So since that was a part of my life, it was an immediate bond for us. If I had known that during the game last Saturday, we'd have been talking Carlos Correa for 3 hours.
That was cool, Michael. That was,
yeah.
I mean, Ted and I were talking on the elevator down. Like, that was really enjoyable.
It was.
In the game. Like, it was a blowout, right? Utah was all over it, but that was awesome, man.
I mean, it's bringing people closer to the college environment, and that's what we sell with this sport is good football, great football, but also the college environment. And I think it was a fantastic display of that.
We sell Saturday, and I'll say again, that's what Michael and Scott Barkey and our crew, Yogi, that we've been so fortunate to work with all these years. That's what they do. And that's what I loved when we were talking about it. That doesn't happen on Sundays. That happens Saturdays, where you have that kind of an experience. And as we were joking, the young dude calls the first touchdown. He calls the play before it happens. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was awesome. Tanner, see if you can splice that in somewhere along this podcast to our producer, because that was all time. I'm sure it's floating all over social media. All right, so this week, here we go. SC gets a Friday night game against Colorado, Arizona State, Washington State. UW is the premier game. Going to Oregon will be Cal, Oregon State, Stanford, Utah, and then Jed Fish goes back to the place where he was once the interim head coach against UCLA. So we know what the A game is, right? We'll talk about that here in a minute. We saw the rankings just come out. Oregon at 6, USC at 8, UCLA doesn't move, 12, and Utah is at 13, and Washington jumps in at 25. Your takeaways from the CFP heading into a huge weekend for the Oregon Ducks.
Well, what matters, I mean, look, Oregon's at 6. I mean, again, it's the second week in a row. So now we have to say that's confirmation that week 1 didn't eliminate them. And that's what, we all wondered what impact that would have. Tennessee is still ahead of Oregon, and you can't argue that. I mean, the wins Tennessee has, even with the loss to Georgia, but to win at LSU and to beat Alabama, I mean, you can't argue that. So again, the Pac-12 got a big break Saturday from Notre Dame. They now need a break from Sark in Texas this week. Somebody has to beat TCU, or TCU's in. They are in right now, and they will be in if they run the table.
Hey, Michael, what'd you take away?
I keep doing this and going, wow, 2 Pac-12 teams ahead of Alabama. That's hard. That's really amazing to see. And I second, as would Professor Schmelsley, that TCU wins out, they've got to be in. I'm actually happy to see them at 4, because it would be so it'd just be so defeating to not see them in, because I think they've at least earned to be number 4 right now. And
yeah, I agree. I think for where it sits today, Oregon and/or SC and/or UCLA, I think you're actually in a fine position. And here's why, is that the committee, we've talked about this before, they value wins. And the teams among those 3, they have a chance for the most quality wins in terms of the amount of quality wins compared to anybody who's ranked higher than them. So Michigan, Ohio State, loser will be out. They won't have any quality wins. I don't think a one-loss one of those teams would get in over a one-loss Oregon, SC, or UCLA. TCU will get in if they're undefeated. And while Oregon, or one of the other two, may sit behind Tennessee up until championship weekend, when they play that weekend, if we believe what the committee says in terms of valuing wins, and then when close, they go to the following: championships won, strength of schedule or strength of record, head-to-head competition if it occurred, and then comparative outcomes of common opponents. That's right from the CFP guidebook. I think the Pac's in really good position, unless LSU wins the SEC. Like, some crazy things happen in that regard, but I think the Pac should be pretty happy with where they are. UCLA fans are probably a little upset with where they sit, understandably. Heck, you can make an argument they should be higher than SC. But I think it shows us that the committee's valuing the entirety of the season as well. So that's kind of where my takeaways were.
All right, I'm gonna throw this out there, guys, and this is something that we've seen before with the SEC. Tennessee's 5. You see who they play? Who their last 3 games are?
Oh yeah,
Missouri, South Carolina, Vanderbilt.
Win, win, win.
Win, win, win. Guess what? They're not going to make the championship game. Georgia is going to be the team from that division. So Tennessee's going to win out. They're going to have 1 loss. They won't have to play championship week. And they're going to have 2 magnificent wins on their resume. How do you beat that? That's the part that I can't stand. That a team that doesn't even play in its own conference championship game, and it's the loser of the Ohio State-Michigan game, assuming both are undefeated when they play, the loser of that game is going to be in the same boat, right? Not going to play in the Big Ten championship game. Going to stand up and pound their chest and say we should still be in.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the debate, and that's why I go to, like, again, if they value quality wins, especially in this stretch, Oregon's going to have to play at least 2, maybe 3 ranked teams, right? SC, UCLA, they'll have to play 2 for SC, maybe 3 ranked teams, right? If Notre Dame can remain in the top 25. So I think when it's close, and we'll find out, like, we have never seen this group of committee members before, so there's nothing to base it on. But I do think that the league, and they say they don't care about conferences, but with 4 teams in the top 13, to me, like, the league is valued. And the fact that they're all going to play each other, I think it's going to carry the weight necessary for a conference champ. And we know all the things. We say it every week, 9 conference games, etc. I think it's going to allow the Pac-12 champ to get in over a 1-loss non-participant in a title game.
Over 1-loss Tennessee. That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's going to be.
I mean, they got.
I'm on board. I'm just saying right now, that's a hard case to make if Tennessee's 5. And
well, here's my argument on it.
Yeah.
And in the Tennessee game, like, we could, and they'll break all the numbers down. Like, all the numbers, if you comp Oregon versus Tennessee against Georgia, they're in Oregon's favor. We do this because we have to present those numbers to the committee, right? So whether it's rushing yards allowed, whatever, like, Oregon actually wins that. Now, they didn't lose by as many points, but I think if you watch the game, you saw a beatdown. Ultimately, I think this will prevail. Year 2, week 10, with a Heisman candidate quarterback, Tennessee got throttled. Year 1, week 1, with a transfer quarterback, in context at the time, Oregon got throttled. I do think there's something, if you're going to take the whole thing into context, in some sort of context, which they will, I actually think a week 10 loss in that style, both road games, is worse than the week 1 loss to Georgia from both of those teams.
I think what you're saying is 5-6 right now is not relevant because of the road ahead, which will give the road ahead, if they went out, will give Oregon the boost past Tennessee. That's
the point. That's where I'm coming. To me, it does matter right now because they've made a judgment. Now they can change their minds.
Yeah,
they have the ability to do that. But as of right now, they've made a judgment that Tennessee's ahead of Oregon. So now, what is the reason that Oregon leaps Tennessee? And
obviously play tougher competition the rest of the way, I think, right? And
what scares me, though, to that point, exactly, Michael, but what scares me to that point is, are we relapsing back to an era in college football where the score matters? So does Oregon have to beat, not just beat Washington, of course, this week, clearly, but then beat Utah by 30, and then win the championship game if it's USC or UCLA, the winner of that game, and win that by 30. Do they have to do that? Is winning enough, or do you have to win with style?
My take on it, and that's why I think it's important that we keep pounding the drum as loud as possible. And this year you don't have to do it as much because the conference is really respected nationally, right? Like whether you saw Herb Street on that show, like the people that are doing this, I think really value the weight of the league. So my opinion is that the quality of win will allow that team to elevate over the style of win. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. And look, we can counter that because I look at SC and UCLA and I'm like, okay, they both had games that went in the fourth quarter. UCLA didn't have Zach Charbonnet, didn't have their defensive coordinator, Bill McGovern, for the second straight week. SC didn't have Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, Eric Gentry either, among others. And I just saw one rose, one stayed the same. And I am of the ilk of, I think UCLA is a better team today than USC based on the players that are healthy. So we'll see. The one thing that bothered me, which this is just quick soapbox moment, I'm gonna hop up and hop down, is Clemson. How on the God's green earth is Clemson number 10? They don't know what their quarterback is. 2 out of 3 weeks, they've only had 2 games. They've played 2 quarterbacks in both of those games and got drilled by your Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who now all of a sudden everybody wants a trumpet, which is great. Let's remember Stanford beat Notre Dame.
Yep.
Cal got screwed on a call against Notre Dame. Now, this is the Pac-12 slant, right? Like, I get it. Cal lost the game. But my point is, like, if we're going to start playing that game, then let's start playing that game. And maybe we need to. I'm good.
I love it. Yogi, does Clemson being in the top, does this deserve the Mars treatment? If 100 people came down from Mars,
It does.
there you go. Thank you.
Golly.
Michael, look, it's only taken me 6 years to rub off on you.
Finally, it's finally happened. Nice.
Jeez.
Save it for the air, Yogi. Save it for the air.
If Utah and Clemson played against each other, it wouldn't be close.
Look, and I think that's where we have to see over the next couple of weeks that the committee judges conferences, because the ACC is not having a good year. It just isn't. Who's the second best team in the ACC? North Carolina. They gave up 6. They gave up 60 a week, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
The eye test. That's what they call it.
Right, Michael. And the other point, though, the bigger picture, is that this is a great conversation to have. It's been too long since we've been able to talk this way in November about Pac-12 football teams. So yeah, if we have our soapbox moments, we all with it. That's okay. This is a good problem.
Yeah. Well said. I appreciate that.
Hey,
okay.
by the way, if they gave us one of the 2 biggies on November 19th, I think we'd find a way to get it on at noon Pacific, just for the record.
Wow.
One of the networks wanted to give it up to us, we would take it. We'd put it on noon Pacific. But anyway.
Well, I'm sad. I'm sad for November 19th. We maybe do more next week. And John Wilner just wrote a nice piece. Again, John does the digging about why the TV minutia, about why these things happen. But to me, it's again something that I hope the conference fixes in the next round of television, because you're going to have the best teams in the conference, including Washington, the game we'll be doing, which is a top 25 team, playing in the witness protection program. There will be nobody watching Washington play that night other than Washington fans, because they'll be going straight up against USC, UCLA, and Oregon, Utah. That's wrong. It's just not good for the conference at all to happen.
Yeah. In 2 years. Hopefully we're calling that game the biggest one of the weekend. All right, so let's get to the biggest one of the weekend. Washington, we have Oregon State this weekend, so we have all studied Oregon State. They lost to UW over the weekend. I think Oregon State's still a top 25 team, like them or UW. It could have gone either way in that ball game. With that said, we have a top 25 matchup, which is great for the Ducks. This rivalry is awesome. Huge stage in Autzen. What do you think of it? Because it's kind of cool. Like, it's 2 first-year head coaches, 2 first-year transfer quarterbacks, 2 guys that are playing at a ridiculous level. Bo is a Heisman candidate. Michael Penix, I think, leads the country in passing yards per game or some stat at the quarterback spot.
Many stats.
Many stats.
Yes.
This is a great game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is Kalen DeBoer's, Michael Penix played some pretty big stages in the Big Ten. For Kalen DeBoer, this is probably the biggest stage, right?
Yes, it's Michigan State. Yeah.
But this is the,
This is
I know each school has their in-state rival. This rivalry, we've learned enough in this league. This rivalry might be just as intense, right? He did as the rivalry. In-state rivals that each team has, which we get. And I saw a comment Kalen DeBoer made. He said he hasn't made a speaking engagement yet since he's taken the job, where he hasn't been told beat the Ducks. So that's going to be, and the fact that Michael Penix and his receivers, did a nice job of conquering the conditions that were not most friendly for passing. And look, Oregon State, I understand we'll see Jonathan Smith Friday, and I'm sure he's going to be frustrated because I'm watching the game back again. We were in Salt Lake having dinner, watching, and then I watched it again. Oregon State should have won the game. I mean, that's not a could have. That's a should have to me. If I'm in the Oregon State chair, I'm thinking we should have won that game. And then Washington, credit to them, credit to Penix. They go 95 on the last drive of the game. You gave them a shot, and they stuffed it right down your throat. All credit. That's to me, that was a huge leap forward by Michael Penix into this top tier quarterbacks that we've seen in the league this year.
You go back and you watch that. I was blown away. End of the half, Alex Austin drops a short pick six. It's 21-7, and he catches it and goes in the end zone. And we're not even talking about where they didn't get it inside the 5. It could be even more. We had a chance to talk to Jack Coletto earlier today, and the thing that I loved that he said was, he goes, our guys, we're a really mature group. Like, we just go back to work. And I feel that about his team because it had a chance to be a separation moment. They didn't get it. UW, to your point, gets the win with Penix leading the way. I think in this game, where my eyes go to is I want to see Christian Gonzalez against Roma Dunzier all day long. Like all day long. And I think there's reason to believe we'll probably see something like that.
Well, Christian Gonzalez made himself some attention last weekend, didn't he?
Sure did.
Goes to Boulder and has 2 picks. Ooh.
And then the O-line of Oregon's going to get tested. I think Washington has the best edge rushers in the league. We saw him in person a couple weeks ago. We'll get him again next week. To Ted's earlier point, it's going to be the Oregon O-line. They're going to have a stage. Like, can they run the football? The misdirection of Kenny Dillingham, even Ryan Grubb. Like, we're talking about 2 of the hottest young coordinators in college football, in Power 5 football. Ryan Grubb's been doing it for a long time. Kenny Dillingham's first time really having control of the whole thing. But I think there's intrigue like all over the yard in this game.
So can Washington run the ball on Oregon?
I don't know.
And can Washington slow Oregon's run game? Because, I'm coming back to that. Right now, I'm giving Oregon the edge because they're a better run team.
Yeah, I'm giving Oregon the edge too, especially at home. Washington, I believe, will, for the first time all season, have back-to-back games with the same starting defensive lineup, which I think is critical because we're kind of seeing their best guys out there. There are inside guys. Studying them today against the Oregon State run game. They did a pretty good job. Like, there's a lot of movement. They're really active. They're really physical. But I give Oregon the advantage because of what Bo Nix can do with his legs. Mm-hmm. And he's been so accurate. Like, he's leading the nation in so many categories, most rushing touchdowns, most combined touchdowns, like 31 or 35 combined passing and rushing touchdowns. He's playing with just such confidence that I think we'll have a hell of a game. This is not going to be the Jake Browning point at you into the end zone game. You remember that? It was like 70 to something a long time ago. Like, this will be highly competitive, but I think Oregon will do what they've done to everybody, which is just kind of wear you down and pull away.
And who wears you down? Offensive line.
Yeah.
And we're going to be 35 miles away. So we've been, I say that only because we've been checking the weather. It's going to be dry. There's 0 rain, right? You guys seen the same forecasts?
Never rains in Austin Stadium.
Right. So, I mean, for the passing, especially if you're Penix and Odunze and the Washington receivers, maybe some fall chill in the air, but it's not going to be wet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that'll be pretty cool. Something that's really intriguing to me about this weekend is calling it like backs against the wall. Arizona State, they got to win out. Wazoo needs a win to be bowl eligible. Cal has to win out. Stanford has to win out. Arizona has to win out. I think all those teams, like when you know you have no margin for error, I think we'll get their best early. I don't want to necessarily predict the Cal Oregon State game, but out of the others, anyone you see where the team that has to win gets the win?
Well, I mean, living where I do, and again, being more in the Stanford world, they just need a win. Arizona just needs a win. We've seen them for their last 4 games, and it's been a rough go for them. Quality opponents, etc. They just need to win games, and just the feel good moments. So Stanford has a tough ask. I mean, look, for the first 5-6 years of this conference in its state, Stanford Utah was always the game we looked forward to, right? The most physical matchup every year in the conference, and it isn't that way anymore. And I credit, because I didn't see any of the game last Saturday, but I credit David Shaw because he stood up and took full-on responsibility. I mean, he said, look, our best players have to play, so he didn't leave the players out, but he said it's with me. And, that was from my sources who were there, from the Stanford side, that was ugly in capital letters. So I just hope there's a rebound in their quality of play, in their level of play, and it'll be the whole Utah emotion, as we heard from Andrew, because it's their last home game. And so even though senior day is a joke, because you may have, you have 4th-year seniors, you have 9th-year seniors this day, so you don't really know who they are anymore. But for a lot of key players, this could be their last game. So there'll be that emotion in Utah.
Well, you can't predict, but I think our game, I think Cal Oregon State's going to be, I think that's going to be a pretty competitive game. And I think Cal's definitely has a chance. But you look at the rest of the schedule and it does seem like, I guess the other one would be Arizona State, Washington State, but I think that one can be competitive too. But I don't see any of the biggies, and obviously Washington, Oregon, I like Oregon there, but I think the rest of them, I think the teams you expect to win are going to win. But I think our game, Cal Oregon State, I think that's going to be a close one. And Oregon State's had close games all year, it seems like. So
I mean, look,
the theme of the weekend.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Michael. The theme of the weekend really is, again, look, we're seeing you put the Fox big noon game on every week now, and it's either Ohio State or Michigan beating somebody by 40 points. They've been horrible games every week, and of course they're all geared up for one game that matters. Well, the Pac right now, our matchups, Washington, Oregon this week being an exception, but the matchups right now are out of whack a little bit because everything's geared toward November 19th. So for the top 4, again, one more time to hold your serve, and then you have a Saturday that everybody's going to really cherish.
Yeah, I wonder for SC who plays. Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, Eric Gentry out again, 2nd straight week for them. Like, do you hold them? Do you want to get them going? Because there's no room for error against UCLA. Curious about that, because we saw that with Cam Rising. Like, and Kyle Whittingham referenced it after the game. He wasn't as sharp as he traditionally had been, coming off of a 21-day layoff from the time of the USC game to the time of the game that he played last weekend. So I'm curious about that and what happens. I think among the other ones, like Stanford, it's really intriguing because of what happened last year. Remember that game against Utah last year? We were in Pullman, I think, or Spokane. They got rolled against Utah. Devin Lloyd had like the batted down ball, but he caught it and scored a touchdown, kind of fell in the end zone. Huge moment for him and that team. So I want to see, like, to what David Shaw said, how do they compete? Right? He called it I think he said I'm leaning on their pride, or I'm asking them, something along that line, right, Ted?
Yeah.
So with that, and then the Arizona game, all these guys from Southern California, we've told this story many times. I think that the Utah game they ran into it. It was too much. Like the stretch of games, like you go down, and from the Oregon game on, it was Oregon, UW, SC, Utah, now UCLA. Everybody was ranked at some point. Now Washington, of course, being ranked. It'll be interesting to see that game. UCLA's got to get their defense right. Well, and I think this is a good test for them.
Yeah, and there you go. I mean, look, if you're going to say, like, I would give Stanford minimal chance in Utah, but I would say Arizona. I mean, that's one you can in your mind conceive of a way they win, and what I think would be great to see for the Arizona standpoint is play a clean game.
Yeah,
play a clean game. Delora, good decisions, minimize, if not eliminate turnovers, play a clean game. Because if you do that, you will move the ball. We know that. They will score points. And we know UCLA is not a shutdown defense. So that gives you a chance, right? But we've seen Arizona play 4 straight games where they've struggled to not beat themselves.
One other thing in our game, Chance Nolan. Are we going to see Chance Nolan? We haven't seen him since we were in Salt Lake City several weeks ago. But it looks like he may be back, which puts a little more intrigue into that game up in Corvallis.
Yeah, you ain't lying. And then even like Jack Plummer, he played for Purdue last year, completed 70% of his passes in a win over Oregon State. And Cal is coming off their most productive passing game of the year. I think threw for 406 against SC. And Oregon State, would we agree, most complete secondary in the league that we've seen?
Best defensive game I've seen all year was their game against USC. So if they, we know we've seen enough of Jack Plummer that he is not a mobile quarterback. So if Oregon State pressures him in the pocket, flushes him, right? Which I'm assuming that's part of Trent Bray's plan this week.
Yeah, I'd imagine that too. A name to remember, Sione Lolohea. Showed up against SC. Remember, he almost had Caleb a couple times. His role has grown. Mm-hmm. This guy is playing all over the defensive line at an all conference caliber level from watching him. So that'll be a name to keep an eye on. It'll be fun. Go ahead.
And 2 really good freshman running backs. Jay Knott had his explosion early in the year for Cal. People have been sleeping a little bit on Damian Martinez, but he's pretty much become the back now. Yeah. They play 3 at Oregon State, but Martinez has kind of become the guy. And they've got a couple of years to look forward to him in Corvallis.
Pair of number 6s. I was studying the depth chart already. Pair of number 6s.
I love it. All right, Michael, before we get to the humanity moment of the week, you guys are balancing football and basketball. I think our listeners would be curious, like, Ted, how do you do it? Michael, how do you do it when it's going on?
Basketball's fun. Well, I'll let Michael talk in a second. Trust me, Michael. Basketball's fun. It's a whole different sport than football. I mean, the amount of prep and work that Yogi does every week, that we try to do to keep up every week for college football is by far the hardest sport to call right now. In my job, the hardest sport by a mile, because of the amount of people, the amount of prep, the amount of plays, the varied conditions, the insanity of review and replay. My God, the Alabama LSU game. And by the way, great kudos to Jaden Daniels. Wow. Conference of Champions guy. Remember talking to him with you at a practice last year, Yogi, before their opener. What a brilliant performance he had. And I was watching the game thinking, as I was told this for a long time, Brian Kelly has a very specific offense, and he needs a very specific type of quarterback to succeed in that offense. And it's not necessarily an NFL guy. Jaden Daniels is that guy right now, right? That's succeeding. So it was to watch him. I rewatched the 4th quarter of the overtime of that game. And my soapbox moment, in overtime, they actually tried to replay, saying that there was a fingernail tip of a pass that would have eliminated a pass interference call on the defense. And Herbstreit and Fowler, to their everlasting credit, they have a rules official, whoever this guy is at ESPN, that said, I think that's a tipped ball. And they called him out on the air. Amen, guys. Great job. What are you talking about? I mean, this is where they've got to stop this with review and replay. These microscopic, infinitesimal things, frame by frame, you can't tell. Just stop it. Anyway, the good part, though, Yogi, you were at the tournament with us a couple of years in Vegas. We have a veteran basketball official, David Hall, and David has worked a ton of games in the Pac and around the country for a long, long time. So I was in the room yesterday. I was in Westwood, staying in the Luskin Hotel, the finest hotel on the planet, right next to Pauley Pavilion. And I was watching on our app. I was watching some of the earlier games, and I saw David Hall reffing at Arizona State. I was so relieved. It was great. And then I did our game at Pauley, and Michael Molinari was producing our game. So opening night, we have an annual race. Who's going to work more games?
1-1 right now.
David Hall or Michael Molinari. They both worked on opening night. And great credit, because, and this leads into football, one of the officials last night in our game at Pauley Pavilion was Bill Vinovich. And I walked up to him on the court before the game. I said, how'd you do this? Bill Vinovich Sunday was the referee for the Raiders-Jaguars game in Jacksonville. He's a referee in the NFL. Bill's been a ref for a long time in the league. But he reffed an NFL game in Jacksonville Sunday in Pauley Pavilion last night. But of course, it was that night where anybody with a striped shirt worked a game. Anybody with a voice box that worked called a game last night. I'm living for it. Michael, go ahead.
Well, it was 8:30 Pacific, so we did have some time to get there, number one. But the funny thing about hoops that's changed, hoops used to be the sport that you had to learn the new roster every year because it was a lot of one and dones and people. And now you look at the all conference team and it's all seniors. It's a very odd year. The amount of seniors that are back in Pac-12 basketball this year, it's pretty interesting to see, at least the big names. So that's kind of cool. But I think basketball, to me, basketball sit down, it's a little more reactionary, where football, obviously you're doing some reactions, but there's definitely more planning involved. So I think you sort of, luckily by the time hoop starts, we're seeing teams over again. If I had to do basketball from the start of the season of football, that would be incredibly tough. But now we're getting a lot of repeat teams, so that does help in the football side.
And I'll add one thing, and because just in the spirit of candor, because it's the elephant in the room, being at UCLA yesterday, there was a little bit of an acknowledgement of the awkwardness that's around right now, both UCLA and USC. And we felt it in football, and it was acknowledged to me by some very strong participants in basketball yesterday that it's there. It's just it's above the pay grade of everybody involved, but it's real. So it's, part of the landscape that we've navigated since June 30th.
I will say too, to get the energy up, if you need to get some energy, just go to a Mick Cronin practice. And it will be quite a spirited practice. And we thank him for letting us attend.
Michael, what's the over under on the day his voice is gone?
He might,
I'm not sure he makes Christmas.
Depends on the wins and losses, but I would say Christmas is probably a good bet.
So good. Oh, it's I love that you guys get to stay connected. It's cool to watch that and cheer from afar here. We'll make sure we'll be hitting you up for tickets when you're in LA, bringing the kids.
Zane needs to be working the towels. He's at that age now.
Oh, I'm in.
The towels out there mopping the floor and everything.
Let's make it happen, baby. Make it happen. All right. With that said, Michael, your humanity moment of the week.
Well, Sunday when we got back from Utah, I think I got to the house about 9:15, and my younger daughter Isabella said to me, "Dad, I've got to get to a museum before Monday for some project for school." I was like, okay. How about the California Science Center? The only thing I could think of. So I got home at 9:15. We were on the road at 10:15. Thankfully, it was Sunday in LA, so it only took about 20 minutes to get there. For those who don't know, the California Science Center is right next to the LA Coliseum. Probably the most noted exhibit now is one of the space shuttles, the Endeavour, is now docked, I guess is probably not the right word, but now in a big warehouse there. You can see it. For someone who grew up in the 80s, it's really cool to see the space shuttle. My daughter loved it. And so we're kind of looking at different things. We went up to the top level and kind of just saw this random exhibit. It was called Amazonia, which is an exhibit that features more than 200 photos of the Brazilian Amazon forest by a photojournalist named, I've been practicing, Sebastião Salgado. And these photos are huge. They're black and white. They're incredibly artistic. It gives you a sense of the landscape of the Amazon, which the Amazon is basically kind of the figurative lungs, circulatory system, and incubator of our planet. As amazing as the photos were, some of the facts that were on display, Amazon produces more than 20% of the Earth's oxygen. 20% of the fresh water that enters the ocean comes from the Amazon. 30% of the world's species live in the Amazon. Unfortunately, 30% of the Earth's carbon emissions come from the burning of the Amazon rainforest. And sadly, last year in Brazil, an area approximately 7 times the size of London was burned in 1 year. And it was kind of startling. And, as we walked out of the Science Center on the way out of the exhibit. And by the way, it's not called the Opinion Center for a reason. It's called the Science Center. There was another exhibit on carbon dioxide emissions. And it's pretty remarkable to look at the exponential growth of the last 3 decades of CO2. And sad how the energy has been spent on suspending and delaying reality rather than focusing on solutions. And Isabella looked at those numbers and just said to me, Dad, why aren't we doing more? And I was it was sad and embarrassed to not really have an answer for her at this point. And as we exited into the sunlight, the first thing I saw was the Coliseum as we walked out the doors. And I had a reality check of my priorities that the game that finished there 12 hours ago really seemed a lot less significant. And, as we've mentioned all during this pod, it's election night tonight. And there's a million issues on the table, a million things we disagree on. But if we don't figure out how not to destroy our planet for our children and for our future children, I mean, what other issue could be more important than that? So I think I know we're incredibly divided in this country and in this world, but if we could focus on one thing, I think saving this planet would be the one thing we all could agree on.
Amen to that.
I'll tell you on that, go back, anybody to follow up on Michael's point right there, go look up on the New York Times website from Sunday, October 30th. Look up a piece written by Brett Stevens, who went to Greenland and had been, maybe not the greatest supporter of tackling climate change issues. He made a trip to Greenland and he wrote a long piece about it that is astonishing. So it would follow very much on what you just said, Michael.
It's real. Let's just admit it's real and let's move forward. That's it. That's all I have to say on that.
Amen. The Science Center, not the Opinion Center. Love that. That's not that won't be college football for the next month.
No,
it'll be the Opinion Center. Other than this podcast, we're just the only factual. All right, we love you. Stay safe. We are presented by Bet Online. Thanks for the time and enjoy week 11. Wow.